The title of this report, it says The Sound of Gunfire, and it focuses on what happened at scene 2.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
It's important because to us, really, when the Farlam Commission was instituted, the evidence, the witness accounts, the forensic evidence that came out really focused on scene 1 because there was a lot of media reporting around that. There were actually cameras that were stationed at scene 1, which was also dubbed the Kraal in the report from Judge Ian Farlam. Now, the issue around scene 2 is that there were no cameras there. It was literally only the miners against the police, and we really don't know what happened. All we have is an account from the police which was disregarded by the commission, saying that the information just doesn't add up because so much ammunition, live ammunition, was used in that space. Now, the scene 1 and scene 2 is about 500 meters apart, and when you look at what we know from the report in scene 1, what happened there when 17 people were killed, it was about 11 seconds of absolute live ammunition and police shooting at the miners. But at scene 2, it took about 11 minutes. That's how much time they had. The police literally surrounded that kopi, and that is why it's been dubbed the kill kopi. They surrounded it, and in fact, this report now looks at exactly what happened using the evidence that we found from the Farlam Commission. And it found that, in fact, from the author, David Bruce, he says from what he's gathered and what he saw from the evidence, the police went out there to shoot and kill. They went out there to get revenge for their colleagues that had also died during that week, and they were there basically to get the job done, and there was going to be bloodshed.
Yeah. And in fact, even in the report, there was a lot of focus on the way that police handled this particular scene. And I heard Judge Ian Farlam again today saying that had the operation stopped after the shootings at scene 1, we would not be talking about what happened at scene 2. The police coming in for some heavy criticism, including from the Socio-Economic Rights Institute.
Most definitely. We spoke to one of the advocates for the 36 families that represent those fallen victims, and this is what she had to say. Let's take a listen.
Firstly, Seri and the families are grateful this report has come to light. It does shine a light on what happened in scene 2, but it also brings out very, very important aspects of what happened in scene 2. The fact that people were shot while surrendering, these are things that the miners during the commission had pointed out, but they were not believed. But through evidence that has been analyzed further by David Bruce, we can actually now confirm that this was the case. Secondly, I think this report brings us to a point where everybody must accept that the police were the aggressors, that the miners were the victims, and that means that everything else must follow that consequence. Unfortunately, as things stand now, the victims of the massacre are carrying the burden and the cost of that massacre. When we speak about compensation, the position taken by the state on compensation is still, they still operate from the position that they are doing the families a favor. You know, they haven't at any point acknowledged their wrongdoing. Even as we speak now, we've been waiting for more than 2 years for them on the apology the families requested in August 2015. They have not apologized. The indignity that the families have been served with in relation to the prosecution of the police is even worse. Both IPID and NPA have refused to communicate with them. They've refused to update them on what has happened with those criminal prosecutions. Even worse, we're now 6 years post the massacre, and not a single police officer has been charged for the killings in scene 1 and scene 2 for the 16th of August.
So Nomza Mozondo there of the Socio-Economic Rights Institute talking about the burden that those who, who are family members of those who are deceased from the Marikana massacre continue to carry. I suspect that must have been a key theme that kept coming up. Earlier on, Zikona Chona out in Moinoi, out there in the northwest, was talking to a family member of one of the 10 people that died before the 16th of August 2012. And he was expressing his concern in that, they didn't seem to be focused on them, those 10 that died before the 16th. And there's been this question of whether or not those families were treated equally in the Farlam Commission of Inquiry. What came out of that discussion?
Yes, of course. Judge Ian Farlam, who oversaw the report and the findings and what went into what we know now about what happened in Marikana during the Marikana Commission report, he was there to basically defend and state why exactly it is he found what he found and the recommendations that he put in his report. And a lot of criticism around that report is that the families were ignored, their plight was not taken into consideration. And let's just take a listen to what he had to say in defense of that.
It's not correct that the families were ignored and were not allowed to give evidence before the Commission. There was a full sitting of the Commission at which each family was given an opportunity to state, and their counsel led them, give a full account of their circumstances, the impact on them of the death of their breadwinner and loved one. And this was a full session of the Commission, held in public.
So there's the issue of how the police dealt with the situation. There's the issue around the families. What about political responsibility for it all? I saw a very interesting tweet from you about what Judge Farlam says about, you know, how his report was understood to have cleared all politicians. He doesn't necessarily agree, does he? He
doesn't at all. He says, in fact, former President Jacob Zuma misinterpreted his report in that when he announced his findings, he said that key political players around what happened during Marikana were exonerated. That is not what happened. In fact, we do know that our current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, was in fact exonerated and that he couldn't have known what was going to happen and when the operation was going to happen around the 16th of August 2012. But the issue around the former police minister, Nathi Mthethwa, he says that he did not exonerate him from any wrongdoing or that he did anything right either. He says that his report does say that there needs to be further investigation and further probing into what criminal charges can be laid against key players around this tragedy. So, of course, Nathi Mthethwa, Susan Shabangu, nothing has happened since then. We know that the former police commissioner, Ria Piyecha, resigned before anything really could happen to her either. So there's really a question around responsibility. The police haven't taken responsibility. Political key heads that should have known what was happening on the ground, they haven't taken responsibility. And it's only the families now who have to live with this. 6 years later, no prosecutions, nothing has happened.
I'm wondering then, Slindelo, as a final question to you, if we were able to glean anything new around the process for compensation, the civil suits and the settlement thereof, but also at the same time, we know there's a group of police officers that have been charged, that have appeared in court relating to incidents to do with Marikana, but not necessarily the events of the 16th of August. Did anything come out of the discussion that sort of signals where we stand in those two processes?
Nomzamo Zondo did mention that, of course, they are continuing with that fight, but the process is very slow. The wheels of justice, as you would know, turn very, very slowly. So, of course, they are continuing with that pursuit to get justice for these families, to get that compensation. I mean, you would know that the families asked for a simple apology, a formal apology in 2015, and they still haven't received just that. So, SERI is going to continue to fight for those rights and for the families to get what they rightly deserve.